Hello! Today I'd like to talk to you about embracing a coaching style, which is a highly fulfilling and rewarding experience for everyone involved. We will talk about what coaching entails and how it fits in as a leadership style, the benefits of coaching as a leadership style, key coaching behaviours and skills, goal setting, and unique methods such as GROW and SMART. And first, an introduction. Now we'll talk about the definitions of coaching. There are many definitions, and what I'd impress upon you is to come up with your own. And some formal ones are a powerful alliance designed to forward and enhance the lifelong process of human learning, effectiveness, and fulfillment, from Kingstown College. And the word alliance is really important there. As opposed to telling the person what to do and how to do it, you're working together on this. Coaching operates under the premise that people know themselves and know their own lives better than anyone else does. We need to truly believe that they have the answers within. Then we can truly empower them. When we demonstrate belief in people, they respond well to that and they blossom. Plus, when we make people part of the process and ask rather than tell, they're far more likely to be bought into the process and energized by it. And from ICF, coaching is a partnering in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. And the powerful benefits of the person you're coaching are personal growth, better leadership skills, higher motivation or commitment, better self-awareness, and higher quality of life, etc. The benefits for the team are improved team efficiency, clearer vision, improved morale, creation of synergies, releasing group potential, etc. And then for the organization, a higher return on investment, sustainable learning and development, more effective communication, and improved capacity to change, etc. Now we'll talk about the core skills of coaching. And these are building rapport, listening, using intuition, asking powerful questions, and giving feedback. The last of which is dealt in more depth in another video called Using Recognition and Motivating Each Other. But I'll be going into more depth for the other ones. The first one, building rapport. And there are some concepts or ideas we need to understand when talking about building rapport. One is called marking down. This is when we have an internal checklist that we judge people off based on things like how they look and dress. Do we see them as a threat, or do we see them as one of us? They will be marking you down too, so we need to be aware of this. We need to learn how to adapt to many styles, and we need to break the habit of marking down too. The next one is judgment. This is when we put people into a box that is designated as good, bad, interesting, and so on. We need to be able to remove judgment and see people in a positive light and truly believe in them, because when we believe in people, they blossom. Next is eye contact. We need to be able to hold good, confident eye contact without staring. The next is the handshake. We want this to be firm, but not too firm and certainly not limp. Next is the power of your smile. Very interestingly, when someone smiles at us, the same parts of our brain light up as if we were to smile ourselves. Smiling and being smiled at makes us feel good and creates a connection. The next is intelligent questions. Following these, the other person is talking about themselves and their situation and can be helped to see things more clearly. These questions follow intently listening. And body language. This lends a great deal to the congruency and authenticity of what we say. Now we'll talk about listening, a most important skill. And two aspects of listening are paying attention and building our awareness. And there are levels to our listening. Level 1 is internal listening. This is listening with the intention to speak, and generally the focus is on ourselves. The focus is on what it means to us. So for example, if someone tells you that they're going to be late on a report and you think, how am I going to explain this to my manager? Then you're thinking about your need rather than theirs. The spotlight here is on you, your thoughts, your judgments, your feelings, your conclusions about yourself. Then we have level 2, focused listening. This is listening with the intention of hearing. Here there is a sharp focus on the other person. For example, you may notice the person's posture or tone or energy. You're trying to understand the meaning behind their words and body language. And the highest level, level 3, is global listening. This is where we're listening to deeply understand. We're listening deeply and using our intuition. Here you are in flow and are totally connected to them. And the associated skills of listening are articulating. This is when we paraphrase using simpler or less words. Clarifying. We never want to assume, and we want to make sure we're both on the same page. Metaview. This is listening for the underlying connective personal meaning for the person you're coaching in what they're saying. In other words, what does what they say mean for them? Metaphor. The part of our brain that is responsible for emotions is not responsible for language. So it can be difficult to put our emotions into language. And that's how metaphor can help. For example, if the person is confused, you could ask, do they feel like they're drifting in a fog? Depending on the person, this might make more sense to them. Acknowledging. We want to show them that you empathize and they're not alone and you understand. Now let's talk about active listening. The term active listening is often used to describe listening that builds rapport, shows empathy, and encourages people to open up. It is designed to get better information, gain a fuller understanding of other people's perspectives and positions, and avoids making assumptions and jumping to conclusions. And the following are some steps we can take to demonstrate active listening. The first is giving full attention. Here we would use eye contact, we'd check our body language, we'd minimize interruptions and only take notes when we have to keep that rapport and attention. The next is asking clarifying questions. If we're unsure of the meaning of a word or what that person has said, then we never want to assume. The next is to repeat back content or summarize or paraphrase to check for understanding. We can also reflect feelings and observations. This lets the person know that you empathize with them by acknowledging their feelings as they describe their situation or tell their story. And we should summarize information and what we have heard regularly. Now we'll talk about the primary skill of using intuition. One of the benefits of listening at level 3 is greater access to your intuition. From your intuition, you receive information that is not directly observable, and you can use that information just as you'd use words coming from your coachee's mouth. Intuition can feel like it's coming from different places, and some people describe it as a gut feeling. The next powerful skill in coaching is asking questions. A well-worded question asked in an appropriate manner can significantly shift a person's thinking. So the first we'll talk about are simple questions. These often have the greatest impact because they tend not to interrupt the coachee's thought processes or conversation flow. They have a clear purpose and they can influence without controlling. They don't restrict options. They don't convey judgment or create defensiveness with the coachee. Then we have questions that follow interest. These are questions that enable the client to move forward in their thinking and their choices. Questions that get commitment or hold people accountable are great motivators. By asking questions such as, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And when are you going to do it? We get their commitment. We also want to limit the use of the why question. People who are being coached can feel like it's a request to justify. It elicits reasons and excuses. It can result in defensive behaviours. And it's also generally a vague question as it's not very specific. Then we have powerful questions. These are provocative questions and they help the person to think or act in a more positive, resourceful way. Now we'll talk about goal setting. It's likely you've heard of the SMART concept because goals and action items that are SMART are far more likely to be achieved. The S stands for specific. A specific goal has a much greater chance of being accomplished than a general one. So for example, although it's not work related necessarily, but something we can all relate to is wanting to be fitter. A more specific goal would be to have a BMI of 20. Then we want it to be measurable. Establish concrete criteria for measuring progress towards the attainment of each goal set. A BMI of 20 would cover that too. Then we have attainable. But we want to be optimistic here. We don't want to put our limitations on them because if we demonstrate belief in them, people respond well to that. We want it to be realistic. The goal must represent an objective towards which they are both willing and able to work. And time bound. When are you going to achieve it by? Now we'll talk about a very famous tool called the GROW model. This is a framework we can bring people we're coaching through, or you could even run meetings using this framework. And GROW stands for goal, reality, options, and will. When we ask about the goal, we're finding out what that person wants, and we agree on specific objectives and topics for discussion to enable effective management of performance. So for example, the goal could be to become a better coach. Then we talk about the reality and find out where they are now. Here we invite them to participate in self-assessment and other specific examples to provide evidence of their performance. You could find out that currently they direct people and tell people what to do as a style and how to do it, rather than asking empowering questions. Here you could identify what their beliefs are around their goal as well. And for example, they could believe that they need to demonstrate that they have all the answers, and this could hold them back from being an effective coach. Here you also want to find out what is working and what has worked up until now. You also want to find out their strengths. They might have empathy or curiosity that could be really honed and used and leveraged to be a more effective coach. Then we ask them about their options. What could you do? Here we elicit suggestions from the coachee by asking effective questions and then guiding them towards the achievement of their goals. So for example, you could brainstorm here and come up with a list of options, and they could be to study coaching and ask coaching questions rather than tell people what to do when they ask for direction, and to read 50 pages a week, and a list of things really that we mightn't necessarily commit to just yet. And then with will, you're asking what will you do? What will you actually commit to that's measurable? So here you're asking them to commit to action and define a time frame for the objectives and identify how to deal with possible challenges. So you could ask them what could stop you or what are the potential barriers so you can help them to circumvent them before they even occur. And then you can agree a follow-up meeting. So for example, they might commit to signing up to a course this month, which is a SMART goal, and asking coaching questions at appropriate opportunities rather than continuously telling people what to do and how to do it. And although if you look over the course of the session, you will be talking about the goal, reality, options, and will, but this isn't necessarily linear. You will be jumping over and back between sections depending on what comes up. Now we'll talk about appropriate questions using the GROW model. And first we'll talk about goals. What do you want to achieve? What are the SMART goals you want to achieve? What are the expectations of others? Who else needs to know about this plan? How will you inform them? What do you want to achieve long term? What does success look like? How much personal control or influence do you have over your goal? By when do you want to achieve it? Is that positive, challenging, and attainable? Because we get what we focus on and we want to focus on the positive. We want it to be challenging enough that it energizes us, but not too challenging that we run ourselves into the ground. And it must be attainable. How will you measure it? Now we'll talk about reality. We can ask things like, what is the reality of the current situation? Do you know anyone who has achieved this goal? What can you learn from them? What is happening right now? And here we only want to focus on fact and what is really happening. Who is directly and indirectly involved? If things are not going well, what happens to you? What have you done about this so far and with what results? What is missing in this situation? What is holding you back from finding a way forward? Intuitively, what is really going on here? With options, we're asking things like, what could you do as a first step? What else could you do? What would happen if you did nothing? What options do you have for steps to resolve this issue? What else might you do? What would someone who handles this kind of issue really well do? If you had more time for this issue, what might you try? What if you couldn't fail? What might you try then? If you had total power, what might you try then? What if you could start again? If the constraints you identified earlier were removed, what could you try then? Then with wrap up or will, where does this goal fit in with your personal priorities at the moment? How committed are you to this goal? What steps do you need to take to achieve this? What option or options do you choose? What are your criteria and measurements for success? When precisely will you start and finish each action step? What could hinder you taking these steps? What support do you need and from whom? What commitment on a scale of 1 to 10 do you have to taking these agreed actions? And let's say they say a 7, you can champion that and then ask them something like, what would it take to get that to a 9? Is there anything else you want to talk about now, or are we finished? And just to recap, we've spoken about what coaching entails and how it fits in as a leadership style, the benefits of coaching as a leadership style, developing competence in key coaching behaviors and skills, goal setting and the GROW model, and the unique tools and skills we used are GROW and SMART. Thank you.